My name is Kelly.
And my name is Will.
We are two Florida attorneys.
Who love our 5 dogs.
And 2 cats.
And love listening to true crime.
Mainly me.
So I hope you enjoy our show as we delve into all things spooky.
This is For Crime's Sake. So how pretty is this weather?
Perfect pickleball weather.
Oh, yes. And we're basically professionals at this point.
We're athletes of the highest caliber, and essentially that means that the few times we've played pickleball, we're experts.
I seriously don't even know the rules really yet.
I know, but I do, and basically we're the same person, so we can just can go off of that.
Yeah, no. I think the next thing is you need to teach me like the rules.
Teach you about the kitchen.
All we've been doing, guys, is hitting the ball back and forth, really. I need to seriously learn the rules.
To be fair, though, it is really fun just hitting the ball. That's a good time, too.
And we were going to work on that this week, too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we'll get there.
But yeah, so we have Oliver with us today. So if you hear panting, that's what it is. It's not
it's a very nervous chihuahua that has never experienced any hardship and has no reason to be nervous about the fact that he's sitting here in a studio.
Yes. I adopted Oliver from the Jacksonville Humane Society, actually, like, what was it, 2015, I think?
Something like
that.
And,
yeah, I've had him since he was, like, 10 weeks. So he's, but he's still a very nervous little dog. I don't know what happened really prior to that too much, but
he was really young. I mean, 10 weeks. How much could he have remembered?
I don't know, but he is very nervous. And I think it's the Chihuahua breed anyway.
Yes, that's true.
And here's the thing. We do have our fair share of Chihuahuas. We're not, like, particular to them or anything. This has just kind of happened to us.
It's more like they're particular to us.
No, honestly, they're one of the most common dog breeds to end up in shelters. And so that is how we've ended up with about 3.5 of them, right? Because Winston's half Chihuahua.
The chug is 1/2 Chihuahua. That's the cha in the chug.
So we just ended up with a lot of them.
We do have a lot of them. They're funny, though.
So anyway, little Oliver here is a total Sour Patch Kid. He is very sweet, but he can be a little sour at times,
He is a Sour Patch Kid.
Cute, though. And he just got groomed. So he actually has his little bandana on, and we are actually going to be posting a picture of him to our Facebook, Instagram, and our website at forcrimesake.com. So go check him out.
And Kelly, what is on the docket this week?
So I think a really like big thing I want to work on is honestly kind of doing something with the lawn. Like that whole section over, on the, I guess, left side, we have to redo. We lost, even though it's hot, we live in a warm climate. And
but we had a
really
couple
hot.
of hard freezes
We
this
did.
year, and they took a toll.
They did, and we lost a lot of our plants, unfortunately. So now we're having to kind of work on bringing them, especially as the weather here is pretty warm. It's
starting to warm up pretty fast.
Oh my gosh, what is it? Let me see.
It was like 86 earlier.
Oh my gosh.
It's hot.
Yeah. That's
and
wild.
It's still winter as of our recording this. It is winter.
Yeah. So, it's 82. Yep. 82 degrees right now.
There you go. And it's late afternoon.
So that's kind of something I want to kind of work on. Go probably run over and get some plants from a local.
Do some.
What is it? What would it be?
A local horticulturist.
Horticulturist. Yes.
Yes.
Right. All right. So, Will, what about you?
Well, as you well know, I recently got some Philips Hue Play light bars and a sync box, which, if you don't know what those are, basically is a bunch of fancy colored lights that do stuff when your TV does stuff, and it's super cool. I haven't quite dialed in all of the specifics yet, and the wires still look a bit like a rat's nest, so I'm hoping to dial in the whole setup this week and get that done for us.
Oh, that'd be nice. And honestly, just from what you've done kind of so far with it, I think it's made a difference. So.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was nice watching the movie the other night.
It was. It's a neat little, just adds a little je ne sais quoi.
Yeah. My gosh. Wow. Today we are covering the murder of Karina Holmer, and it remains to this day one of Boston's most notorious cold cases. Sources for this episode are masslive.com, chillingcrimes.com, bostonphoenix.com, and coldcasene.org. And there is a trigger warning. There is a discussion of mutilated remains in this episode. So if that makes you uncomfortable, this might not be the episode for you. And just check us out next week.
Yeah. Come back next time.
This case has to be one of my top 10 cases in terms of wanting it to get solved. It is so interesting and just it's terrifying, bizarre, and I don't think
I know anything about this one.
Yes, and I really need to know what happened here. It's crazy. Karina Holmer was from Skillingaryd in Sweden. Oh, and also there's some mention of like Sweden, like places in Sweden. And if I mess it up, I apologize. And if anybody knows the correct way to say it, let me know. I tried to actually look up how to pronounce them, but I couldn't find all of them. Anyway, Karina was, from Sweden. Skillingaryd is a small locality next to the river Lagan in the province of Småland. It has a long and still very active military presence.
And is that Swedish military or U.S. military?
Swedish.
Okay.
So growing up, Karina was a good student, loved animals. She was adventurous and looked forward to the day she could finally travel. And when she was 19, Karina won $1,500 or 10,000 crowns on a lottery scratch card in Sweden.
That's really cool.
Right?
Good for her. Well, yeah.
So her dream had come true. She could finally travel. And Karina's dad, Ola Holmer, still remembers the last words she said to him before she boarded her flight to Boston. She said, "I hope I am doing the right thing." And this will be ominous for what ends up happening. But anyway, Karina headed to the U.S. in order to look for a job as an au pair. And there are several agencies placing young women in jobs as au pairs. And that's basically, like kind of like a nanny, I would say here, but they tend to be, foreign women who take these jobs. And they do sometimes cleaning, sometimes cooking, caring for children.
Kind of just like a live-in babysitter.
Yes, live-in, exactly. And sure enough, she quickly landed a job with a wealthy family in Dover, which is about 15 miles outside of Boston. Her new employers were Frank Rapp and his wife Susan Nichter, both artists. Frank was a commercial photographer and Susan was an artist and a professor at a local university. So Frank and Susan had 2 children. Their son was in 1st grade and their daughter was a toddler. Karina was expected to watch over the kids as well as clean the house during the week. And the children really liked Karina and the time she spent with them. Karina lived in the family condo with the family during the week, and Frank actually worked primarily from his loft in South Boston during the weekdays.
Okay.
So she would be there with the family in Dover, and then he would be in the city. And so he would stay there throughout the week and then return Friday. Return Friday to stay in Dover with his family. And this was actually perfect because it allowed Karina the opportunity to stay in the loft on weekends.
Oh.
Yeah, so that way she could explore the city, hang out with friends, and do all the things young adults do.
That must have been, honestly, a pretty cool thing for her.
Oh, absolutely. And it appeared that she was having a great time.
Yeah.
So Friday, June 21st, 1996, was like any normal Friday for Karina. Frank headed home to Dover. Karina went to the loft. And that night, Karina and her friends all met up there before heading out to the club. And this was typical since the loft was really close to the bars and clubs. So they hang out at the loft for a bit and then head over to Club Zanzibar. And Club Zanzibar was a nightclub in the theater district. And just going to put this out there for anyone that's curious. Club Zanzibar is now closed.
I don't know what's going to happen here, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say maybe that's for the best. Maybe not.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if any more so than any other club, if that had any, I don't know.
Fair enough.
So anyway, this area was popular with au pairs and people traveling from Europe. So because Karina and her friends weren't 21 yet and not able to legally drink alcohol, they used fake IDs to get into the bar and clubs. So this Friday was extra special because Karina and her friends were celebrating the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year, and it's a big holiday in Sweden.
If you've ever seen the movie Midsummer, you might know a thing or two about that.
Oh, that movie was
that's
terrifying.
That's what that's about.
Yeah. So Karina was out having a good time, drinking and dancing, and she really liked to meet new people. So she was seen, by a bunch of different people that night. A lot of people actually remember seeing her. On June 23rd, so 2 days after she went out with her friends to Club Zanzibar, a homeless man was searching dumpsters for food in the Fenway and Back Bay area. And he came across a dark green trash bag. And when he picked it up, he realized it was very heavy. So when the man ripped open the trash bag, he wasn't prepared at all for what he found. It was a woman's arm. And he immediately contacted police. Police arrived and discovered that an arm wasn't the only body part in the trash bag. They also found the upper half of a woman's body.
Oh, gosh. Not a good sign.
No. But listen to this. The lower half was nowhere to be found.
Ooh, gruesome. Gruesome.
The upper half had clearly been mutilated. So news of this spread and was featured on the news. And after this, police received a call from Frank and Susan, her employers. They wanted to report their au pair Karina missing. And so she went out, Friday night? So this was Sunday.
And
yeah, she was probably supposed to be coming back, and then they realized, yes.
But so they called the police after this had been reported on the news?
After, yes.
Okay.
Her friends had reported that she never returned back to the loft after their Friday night out. And tragically, shortly after, the body is confirmed to belong to Karina.
Okay, so something bad happened there.
Absolutely. So Zanzibar is about 1.3 miles away from the loft, and it's like a straight walk down Boylston Street. So close, straight walk. So let's talk about Karina's cause of death. So Karina had been strangled. Ligature marks, possibly from a rope, were found on her neck, and an autopsy later confirmed this to be the case. Karina was dismembered. Her body was in a way that only requires the spine to be severed, basically at the middle of her torso, right below her ribs, but above her pelvis.
Okay.
And police believe this was done with a saw. Her body was then cleaned.
Odd. Very odd.
A partial fingerprint was found on the trash bag where Karina's partial remains were found. So let's get into the investigation. So even though plenty of people saw Karina, most of those people had been drinking, which unfortunately led to contradictory statements.
Yeah, we see that a lot with drunk witnesses.
Yes.
Not very reliable, unfortunately.
And that night, June 21st, Karina's friends had left Zanzibar before she did. Two had left with men they met, and a third friend had passed out from drinking so much that she left with a bouncer. And this is a good time to mention, if you go out together, stay together, and look out for each other. You know, just if you're going out, have fun, but make sure that you all return home safely at the end of the night.
That is very, very good advice. It doesn't cost anything to just keep your group together so you know where everyone is in case.
Yep. So, and that's not me throwing any blame. It's just a good rule to live by.
It is.
Yep.
Buddy system.
A few witnesses remember seeing Karina inside the club pretty intoxicated. And Scott Fainer, one of the employees at Zanzibar, wrote an article detailing his last memory of seeing her there. He remembers her being passed out along the left wall, teetering on a tall chair with her head buried in her hands.
So that sounds pretty bad. It sounds like she was pretty messed up.
Yeah. He was asked by a bartender to get her a cab. And he unfortunately had to run and grab something quickly from a back room. And when he came back, she was gone. Now, he didn't know Karina. He just recognized her from a picture as being the super intoxicated woman that he saw at the bar, which is a distinction with a difference.
It is. It is. Yes. It's not recognizing somebody that you've seen before on a number of occasions or something like that. It's it's.
No, well, he does claim to have seen her at Zanzibar before. So he has seen her. He just didn't know her name or anything. So he said he had seen her before. And several other people did see her outside the club. And at that point, she was talking to different people. It seems like there's a lot of different statements of people seeing her
going on here
to different people. Yeah. So someone saw her dancing with a homeless man. Another person saw her talking to a local neighborhood man who was out walking his big white dog. And someone else thought they saw her getting into a car. And another person thought she had left with a man to go to a party.
So it's all over the place.
Yeah, you can see there's a bunch of different statements which make this tough.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that a bunch of these people were intoxicated themselves, which makes this even more difficult.
Absolutely.
So here's what we know. Karina left Zanzibar. She was outside in the large alleyway with a ton of other people. And Zanzibar shared an alley with a bunch of other clubs. So at closing time, all the people would leave and end up in the same area. And this line of bars was called the alley. At around 3 a.m., Karina tried to re-enter Zanzibar, but they refused to let her in because they were closing.
Okay, so we know at least as of 3 a.m. she's alive.
And after this point, that's when she was seen speaking to a bunch of different people.
Okay.
A big problem was that they didn't know where Karina was actually murdered. They just had a dump site. So police did search numerous apartments in the area. Bunch of people were questioned. And by a bunch, I mean like over 300 people have been interviewed.
Wow. So, I mean, they
did a lot with that.
They put the boots to the ground.
Leading up to Karina's murder, she had written home to her friend Ulrika Svensson. Her letter read that something terrible had happened. She said she could not tell Ulrika right now what it was, but that she would tell her when she got home.
So that's interesting. Okay.
And the plan originally was for Karina to come home in August, but it looks as though Karina wanted to cut her trip short, which is interesting.
So she was wanting to leave America sooner than intended?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
So Karina's older sister, Joanna, said that Karina never had mentioned anything to her about something terrible happening. But Karina did mention that she wanted to come home sooner than originally planned.
Okay.
But I think there's, sometimes people are more comfortable telling, their best friend stuff than maybe their sister.
Yeah. I mean, if there was a letter from Karina that said something terrible has happened, I would generally tend to believe that.
And something terrible, easily could have happened, and she was sharing it with her best friend.
Yeah, maybe it just wasn't something that she felt comfortable with her sister. That's I don't think that's unusual.
Police did search Frank and Susan's home in Dover. They used cadaver dogs, and the dogs did not hit on anything.
Okay.
And this is so interesting, but the dumpster that Frank and Susan shared with some neighbors caught on fire the day after Karina's remains were found. I know. But investigators did send the ashes from the trash to Boston for them to be analyzed. But no sign of any blood or human remains were found.
Interesting.
Like, it's like coincidence?
It's just so
Weird.
hard to accept a coincidence like that, but...
It's like, how often do fires happen there?
Right? I guess maybe if that dumpster burns every other week, it's not that big a deal, but most of the time, as much as, the world might be a dumpster fire, dumpsters don't just catch fire.
Yes. So one of the people that police questioned was the neighborhood man who was out walking his big dog. And his name was Herb Whitten. The man, probably not the dog.
It would be funny, though. That'd be a funny name for a dog.
Herb. That's such
very
funny.
formal.
I love that name. He didn't go to bars himself, but would walk his dog and try to pick up intoxicated women, which I don't love this. But
that's super
creepy. Super creepy.
Really, really weird.
Like, he would drive this is bizarre. So let me tell you. He would drive 40 minutes from his house in Andover to do this. 40 minutes.
Oh,
like,
what
that's
is
a real
wrong
effort
with this guy?
Well, it gets... Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like, that's a real effort.
That is.
And he always brought his dog, and they would wear matching Superman shirts.
The dog and the guy...
And Herb.
And Herb would wear matching clothes.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm not going to say that I wouldn't think it was funny for the Chug and I to wear matching clothes, but that would be weird.
He probably thought the dog would get women to start talking to him or possibly make them, like, it would be disarming.
Yeah.
Which is pretty messed up in my opinion. I don't love this. Especially, it's one thing if you're just walking in a park or something trying to do that. It's another thing when you're specifically targeting intoxicated women.
That's so creepy and weird and feels really predatory.
I know. I don't love it at all. There is actually surveillance footage of him from that night, but after speaking with him, police didn't think he was involved in Karina's murder. He was stopped by police the same night, so June 21st, for a driving offense, and the timeline doesn't fit for him to be responsible for her murder at all. So he ended up being ruled out.
Okay.
Well. He did commit suicide a year later.
Okay.
Which is weird, but...
it's weird. Maybe it's not related, but you gotta... I mean, the dumpster fire, that's weird. That's a coincidence. Herb, that's weird. I mean, how many coincidences are there?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Karina, at the time of her death, was dating a police officer, but he was questioned, and he did provide a solid alibi from what it seems. Like, he was away on vacation that weekend. Okay. So he ended up being ruled out. A frontman of a band called Sleep Chamber, John Zewiz, I hope I'm not mispronouncing that, but was questioned, and it seems mostly due to the fact they played in Zanzibar frequently and where he lived, like, in that area. So John lived 2 blocks from where Karina's torso was found, and he was known as an odd guy with this next part. Okay. He was the guy known for having a large bone collection. Like animal bones, just to clarify.
Okay.
Animal bones. But he had a large bone collection.
Did anyone go through just to confirm there were no leg bones amongst
Oh, gosh, I hope so.
I hope so, too.
Some of his shows demonstrated S&M, and he was addicted to heroin.
So, but stuff to look at, maybe, but nothing.
And I think, for the S&M, if it's between 2 consenting adults, everybody...
More power to you.
Yeah, do whatever you want to do.
Just be safe.
None of anyone else's business, but obviously heroin can sometimes lead to other problems as well.
It can, everything. But there have been plenty of heroin addicts in the world. In fact, most heroin addicts who are not murderers.
Oh, absolutely. So no connection was ever found, and he was eventually ruled out.
Okay.
So because of how gruesome the killing was, the FBI's Behavioral Sciences Unit was brought in to analyze the crime and profile the killer. The city had originally been looking into whether it was a serial killer or a sexual sadist, but the body, other than being dismembered, didn't show any other signs of mutilation. So dismemberment could have been done in order to hide evidence of either a sexual assault or possibly to just make disposal easier.
Yeah, just a practical consideration.
The FBI thought this could have been the killer's first time and that he may be inexperienced, but he would likely suffer from a mental illness and be inclined to do this again. So still very dangerous, even if this was his first time killing someone. Yes. Frank Rapp was looked at extensively by police. Former nannies came forward after Karina's death and said that Frank had been inappropriate with them. And he remains a suspect to this day. To this day, no one has been arrested for Karina's murder, and no one has been charged. The rest of her remains have never been found.
Wow.
So what do you think happened at this point?
You know, this one's tough, and I sympathize with investigators because there really is so little evidence to go off of. Herb immediately stood out to me. I know he was cleared, which I'm sure there's good reason for clearing him.
Well, I think obviously if there is a ticket or he has law enforcement contact that night, to me, that's a pretty good indication that he was unable to do it. And they cleared him, where on the other hand, they didn't clear Frank Rapp.
Yeah, and honestly, Frank feels like a pretty compelling suspect.
And the thing is so they cleared the police officer boyfriend.
Right.
They clear John Zawiz, the front man for the band, and they cleared Herb Whitten.
Yeah.
But they never clear Frank. And, he should have, in theory, a good alibi. He was away back home in Dover, 15 miles from the loft. So
yeah, you would expect him to have a pretty solid alibi, and it is weird that his alibi is not sufficient to have cleared him.
And I don't know if that's because the only person he had or people he had contact with was his wife and his young children. I don't know. But
also bear in mind the dumpster fire. The same day they find the rest of her remains. And I know that was tested and they didn't find anything, but is it possible there was some bit of evidence in there that just couldn't be traced anymore, beyond the burning?
So they also...
Or the other au pairs who...
The nannies came forward. That's a big thing. Said he was inappropriate, although they never, it seems like, indicate any violence. But Karina did write that letter to her friend. And that is interesting because for something terrible to have happened, she spent a lot of time with Susan and Frank. And
5 days a week. That's
5 days. Although
ostensibly
Frank was
the only one she was there.
Although Frank was supposed to be at the loft primarily, we don't know how often he was,
how consistent that was.
Exactly. How often that didn't actually happen. Yeah. I don't know.
And if that came up in the context of this investigation after the fact, how reliable would that be, really? I don't know. And that's assuming that, the wife is willing to cover for him, which it seems like she...
If he did it, then
she's obviously complicit.
Which I would never cover for you. Like if I found out you had murdered someone, I would tell you to your face. I would, because I'd want to get away, and then immediately run away and tell the police, because no way. Nope.
Oh no.
First
no
of all, I'm not covering for you murdering someone, but also I'm not going to be married to a murderer.
Yeah, that's fair. And you know what? I wouldn't want you married to a murderer.
Yeah,
you're far too sweet for that. That's no good.
It's not in my Jimmy Jam.
Yeah. But this is a tough one. This is a tough one. I think Frank probably looks like our best suspect today.
Unless it could be just somebody totally random. She was out at a bar. Outside of it, there's a ton of people in that area, which we know she was at. She was in the alley, a ton of other people. She, was in a vulnerable state. Could she have easily, honestly, she could have easily been grabbed.
Yeah, but then you just got to go back to something terrible happened.
Yep.
And she wanted to cut her trip short.
Yep.
You just got to wonder. Anyway.
Detective Tommy O'Leary recounts a heartbreaking question that Ola Karina's father should never have had to ask him. In regards to Karina's remains, he inquired, "What am I getting back?" Detective O'Leary replied, "You're getting her upper torso. You're getting her beautiful face." Is that not heartbreaking?
That hurts so much.
I know, that's just the saddest thing.
Poor man.
The Boston Police Department's Unsolved Homicide Unit continues to review the facts surrounding Karina's murder and is asking anyone with information related to its investigation to call 617-343-4470. Community members who wish to assist law enforcement's efforts anonymously can do so by calling the Crime Stoppers tip line at 1-800-494-TIPS or by texting the word tip to crime 27463. Sometimes all these cases need to get solved are people telling police what they know and have heard.
Absolutely.
So let's bring Karina's family some
closure.
I guess, well,
maybe answers.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there is such a thing as closure in this type of case.
There may not be.
But at least some answers that they deserve.
Answers are better than nothing.
We have posted a picture of Karina to our Instagram, Facebook, and our website. So, Oliver did pretty well. I mean, honestly, he's been on my lap the whole time.
I'm actually pretty surprised that he did as well as he did. I thought he was going to start like barking and trying to jump around after a little bit.
Yeah, he was, pretty nervous, but he,
he's been a good boy.
He's settled on in, and he is honestly always somewhat nervous.
That's kind of how he lives his life.
Chihuahua life. When you know, you know.
True story.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye, guys.